All right, this is futuristic drive sound. We're gonna hit boost. Let's go. The sound is what makes me laugh the most. What's going on? Welcome back, you guys. Right behind me is the 2023 Genesis GV60 Performance. Let's go for a drive. All right, you guys, so Genesis GV60, if you caught it in my C40 recharge video, you would have seen I drove a GV60, a privately owned vehicle, and it was a lot of fun. So if you wanna go see kind of a more in-depth, full first impressions drive review, I'll link it right up here. We're currently at 99% battery, so effectively it's got a rated range of 378 kilometers. But yeah, let's go for a drive. I'm gonna give you my unfiltered opinion. I've driven quite a few EVs, including the Lucid. Actually, yeah, you might you might notice my Lucid hat I'm wearing today. I wore it just because. But let's go for a drive and see how it does. Okay, so we're at the home menu. Let's see what we can do as far as charging goes. We just hit the EV button there, and then effectively it'll give us two different distances, one with the climate control on and one with the climate control off. So of course I want to stay warm, so we're gonna have that on. And then it will show, I guess just by default, the closest EV charging station, regardless of whether it's EV or DC, and if you haven't plugged in any preferences there yet, but we will. As you guys can see, we're at 98%, but we will hit that charge station, and then we are able to add a charge station to our route, but we don't have a route yet, so let's do that first. 44 minutes, 33.9 kilometers. Okay, and of course with the GV60, I am able to throw my navigation up on the screen here. All right, so there we could plug in a specific charging station, but we're not gonna do that. Let's go. So I'm not gonna be driving like a lunatic on the way there, so let's cut to some actual driving. We'll do a bit of a review, and then we'll come back and then we'll kind of assess the situation. As you guys can see, ash gray, glacier white, two-tone interior here. It's not really white. Glacier white to me is like a very, very white that's got a bit of a blue tint to it. This is not that. This is more of an off-white color. I like it though. This is very different from the one I drove. The ash gray doesn't really do much for me. I wish it was a little bit darker, but overall it looks good. Materials are great. We'll get into that. Drive modes. I love how the buttons are right here on the steering wheel. Very, very Porsche-esque of Genesis to do this. This one's very kind of, to use a term, quirky and complex and just full of settings. It reminds me a lot of a modern AMG, especially just in the menus and everything like that. But very glad that they got rid of that incredibly ugly steering wheel that could have been optioned in the GV70, which is a proper SUV. Let's just start right there. Genesis calls this an SUV. It's not. It's a crossover. The biggest differentiation there is, of course, the ground clearance. It feels like a coupe when you're driving it. I can get the seat really low down, which I love, and it looks like a coupe. This doesn't have a lot of the design language that the other Genesis models do have, and we see that in the grille, which it just still does nothing for me. Absolutely does nothing for me. Love the headlights. Everything below the headlights, scrap it. Do something different, in my opinion. It doesn't look terrible, but it just isn't something I can fully get behind. Same with the wheels. 99% of the time, when you look at them, the car's stationary and they just don't look good to me. Right out the gate, those are two things that I don't like about the GV60, but everything else, pretty much, I love. So Here in the performance model, this is the most expensive GV60 you can buy. It comes with the most options. You do get electronically controlled dampers here in the performance model, and of course you get more power. In Canada, they're all dual motor. This one has a 160 kilowatt motor in the front, same one in the back, 429 horsepower. Like I said, 446 pound-feet of torque, except coming back to the buttons on the steering wheel, we have this boost button, which I did mention in my last video. Hit that 10 seconds. We do get a lot more power, 483 horsepower, 516 pound-feet of torque, which is way more than you'd ever need. This thing is quick. You know, there's an entire EV battle going on right now. EV6 comes to mind, the Kia EV6, and of course the Mustang Mach-E Performance, the GT model there, has quite a bit more torque than this, and it's available all of the time. What are we paying? $71,000 Canadian for the standard all-wheel drive, and then here the performance is $78,000 Canadian, so quite a bit more than that C40 Recharge in top spec. Wow, great turning radius. And if you guys haven't noticed, yes, I have our augmented sounds on right now. This is the futuristic sound. I'll get to it in a second. All right, let's take a look at what could be the most ridiculous feature that the GV60 has. This is totally unnecessary, but I really do want your take on what you're about to witness. So in the settings here, we can go into vehicle settings. We've got active sound design. Now that sounds, I don't know, like something out of a Tesla. It sounds like, you know, customizing your ringtone on your flip phone. What do we have? Largest change, moderate change, or smallest change in sound when you hit the throttle pedal. So let's change the sound. We've got futuristic, which provides a sporty engine sound for electric vehicles. Now on the Genesis website, they say it symbolizes the direction of future mobility. Ooh, sounds very intuitive. Now we'll see. We'll see where future mobility takes us. Genesis, don't be so sure. And then below it, we've got G engine, which is the greatest. We're gonna listen to all these in a second. We've got E motor, which is basically the same as futuristic, just not as sure about the future. And then we have custom sound, in which we can go in there and we can customize exactly how loud it gets, how I gotta show you guys this, how exactly it relates to the throttle positioning. They have graphs here, which is just so nerdy. This is something that only Genesis would do. We definitely wouldn't expect this from Volvo, but here in the GV60 we've got it. Okay, let's go into drive. Of course, we will go into sport mode. The throttle gets way too sensitive for my liking in sport, but we'll do it for the sake of the video because I love you guys so much. And of course, we'll get off the line again. We'll do another launch here. All right, this is futuristic drive sound. We're gonna hit boost. Let's go. The sound is what makes me laugh the most. It really is. It's not the power, it's not the torque, although it is fun. There is not, of course, as much engagement as you would get with a gasoline-powered vehicle, but let's hit this. This is the best button in the entire GV60 experience. It makes an augmented engine sound for you. That to me, you guys, having an augmented engine sound in your EV is a lot like vegans calling burgers burgers. It's like, clearly you guys want the better option. Clearly you guys are still reminiscing over your much simpler past lives. That's what gives me the biggest laugh here, is that there is an option when, on those days, on those lonely night drives, when you may miss your gasoline powered engine, which inevitably will happen, that's there for you to comfort you as the hum of the engine is still missing. You get most of the feeling there. That's hilarious. Yeah, we've got a lot of settings here. How it drives. Of course, our drive modes, we've got Eco, Comfort, and Sport. So Eco is incredibly non-sensitive and invasive when it comes to steering, throttle inputs. It's very lazy. If you really need to stretch your range those last few kilometers, that's what you're going to want to put it in. And it does have variable ratio steering as well, so that changes along with the suspension here. Now, there's not a huge change in suspension feel between the three settings I've found. It does get a little bit stiffer in Sport, but for a car with the word performance in the name, it's right there in the name, right? It doesn't really evoke that much performance feel through the suspension. I guess that's a good thing, especially when comparing it to some modern German cars that just get way too stiff. But in Sport here, the steering does get a little bit quicker, gets a little bit heavier. Not the greatest steering feel, but of course, we're coming at this from a performance angle. Obviously, duh. This isn't me, this is Genesis telling me to do this based on the name, right? So there is that. Brake pedal feel is generally good. I mean, for coming to like a smooth stop, it has been phenomenal this whole week. It's very easy to modulate, especially at lower speeds. I would like to nerd out more on the EV stuff a little bit more for you guys to give you an idea of what's actually happening here. Of course, ignoring my Lucid hat, as you guys should do. So what makes the GV60 a little bit different from a lot of the other EVs on the market today is it is based on a 800 volt battery architecture versus the 400 volt of most EVs. So what does that mean? That means that the current that is needed to charge the vehicle is a lot less, reducing the heat and effectively speeding up the charge times significantly. So the Volvo C40 I drove was 40 minutes, 10% to 80%, which is basically a general metric of charging that we're using here. Whereas here, at its max charging capability of 250 kilowatts, we are able to charge that amount in 18 minutes. That's less than half the time. And the same cannot be said about the Mustang Mach-E. These are the biggest differences here in terms of charging. I get it, okay? We've got manufacturers coming out claiming they can charge whatever they're claiming and advertising these charging speeds when it's really a pairing. There has to be a symbiosis. Is that a word that I can use there? I don't know. But there needs to be a connection, no pun intended, between the charging infrastructure and the charging rates. So we'll test that, but that's what really matters. The real world data we bring back versus just 18 minutes. Okay, well, if you don't have a DC fast charging station that's capable of that around or on your road trip, then what's the use, right? All right, well, that was our drive. 78 kilometers. So we started off with a estimated range of 341 kilometers, which interestingly enough was nowhere near the 378 kilometers of range that this vehicle is rated at. So that is worthy to note. I'm sitting here now at 78% battery. So we went down 20%. And we went 78 kilometers, but in our estimated range, we went down 84 kilometers. So only a difference of 6 kilometers from our estimated range at the beginning of the drive to where I'm sitting at right now. So we should be able to hit very close, if I can lighten my driving habits a little bit. By the end of this charge, I should be able to hit really close to that 341 kilometers estimated range that we had at the beginning of the charge. That's great honesty. I love it. Genesis so far has been very accurate in their reporting of estimated range. Now that is not something that I found personally when I drove the Lucid Air Grand Touring, I did mention it. But again, I was driving that car, of course, because it had 819 horsepower, almost double what this has. Because that car was so fun, I was driving it like a lunatic. So of course, I wasn't getting anywhere close to the rated range. Also, it was colder that day. It's beginning to get cold now, but throughout the day, it's been about 8 or 9 degrees Celsius, which for me is still above 7 degrees Celsius. But there you go. That's the GV60. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Subscribe if you guys haven't already. So we'll see you guys very soon.